Reddit's most epic revenge stories. A curated collection. Part 2.
I had a kid in middle school who was kinda mean to me and my friends over the course of the year. One day he tried to strangle me in gym class with a cord kinda jokingly. However, I had had enough and went to the principal with my parents and witnesses of that event. My parents threatened to press attempted murder charges on the kid. Also, he had been caught with a knife in his backpack. Kid was permanently expelled from the school. I believe he is actually in prison now for attempted murder on someone else. Well, my revenge took place years after the bullying, but let me tell ya, the feeling was magnificent. I was driving one night and I got rear-ended. This took me by surprise simply because this was at 3 in the morning and I was the only vehicle on the road at this time in this area. Or so I thought. Turns out he was driving drunk, and I just so happened to have neck pains and trouble sleeping due to the traumatic event. I was able to sue him for enough to pay medical, my vehicle, and a little extra pocket money. That's what you freaking get for pushing me into the locker, Chad. It's always Chad. Frick that guy. There was a boy who picked on pretty much every girl in his grade when we were in grade 7. Him and his friends started getting fairly physical and started grabbing girls' butts and crotches in the hallway between classes. No one ever stood up to him because he was the very tall, cool, athletic, popular kid, and pretty much everyone was intimidated by him. I played trumpet in band class, and I was the only girl who did, in a big group of boys including him, so he picked on me a lot, calling me butch girl and lesbian or dyke simply because I played trumpet instead of flute or clarinet. I wasn't even a tomboy, I was a pretty feminine girl, so he was really reaching. One day he came up behind me in the hallway after school was out, and of course he grabbed me sort of under my butt almost to the front of my crotch so hard that it really hurt. Luckily I was carrying my trumpet case, so I spun around and smashed him in the balls with it. He crumpled down to the ground with tears in his eyes and never bothered me again after that day. Sometimes I feel a little bad though because I wonder if I may have caused him permanent damage. I hope you did. I smacked the crap out of my sister one Christmas. She was 10 years older than me. I was 10, she was 20. My dad beat my butt on the spot. Reddit, what's your best funniest personal example of petty revenge? This happened a while back. Study hall in 8th grade actually. I always brought 2 small sandwiches to school so I could have one at lunch and one in study hall since our teacher let us eat in that class. One day as I was about to eat my sandwich, I get up to use the bathroom. As I walk back in the classroom, I see the kid in front of me eating my sandwich. I was pretty annoyed but nothing serious at this point, so I confront him politely and he denies it completely. I left my sandwich on my desk the next day just to make sure it was him, and what do you know? It is. So on the 3rd day, I hatched a plan. I put habanero cheese on my sandwich, and then doused it all in ghost pepper sauce. That crap was everywhere, but it luckily didn't smell spicy. I get to study hall and my plan works flawlessly. I leave my trap sandwich on my desk and get up to use the restroom. This time I take as long as I can, and end up wandering the halls of the school. I did this because my study hall teacher was anal about the hall pass, and only one guy was allowed to leave the class at a time, even for water. After about 10 minutes I come back into the class to be greeted by the sandwich thief crying hysterically with a bright red face waiting for the hall pass. He was in the bathroom for the rest of the day. My ex cheated with a married man. He now lives with her. He is a pose. But anyway, I still have login for her DVR. I logged in, erased all her shows, then recorded only the show Cheaters. Petty, but it makes me laugh. A guy at work peed me off. I placed this Craigslist ad with his phone number. 2 free goats. Hablas Espinal. He spent the rest of the day getting calls every 15 minutes or so. My mom had a fantastic one. She was a language teacher at my high school, and years after I had graduated, she called me kind of upset because a group of guys was trying to make her look dumb. The class was supposed to write one of those team dialogues in Spanish, and had a week or so to prepare it, then had to perform it in front of the class. When she called for them to do theirs, they said, "But we already did ours." "We're not doing it again," she said. "You definitely didn't do it. I don't have any record of it here and I would remember it if you had." They refused to do it, insisting they already performed it and that it was her fault she didn't take notes scores down. She was feeling puzzled and questioning herself when one of the good kids came and said, "They didn't do it. They were bragging about making you look stupid and threatened the whole class if they told you anything. But please don't tell them I told you this. I don't want any problems with them." These were those stereotypical dumb jock types who everyone was scared of for whatever reason. My mom was really into yoga at the time and got a great idea while meditating. She went in the next day and said, "Boys, I owe you an apology. I found my notes on your presentation and I do remember it. I don't know how I forgot." She went on to describe all the grammatical mistakes they made, that their dialogue hadn't been as long as required, that they didn't include the necessary vocabulary, etc. All made up. She failed them all on the project and they couldn't do a thing about it without admitting they'd made it all up. I was waiting for she told them it had been so good that they'd been selected to present it during a school assembly the next day, but this was better. Kid stole my water bottle. I opened it up and left it inside his backpack. When I was a kid I had a bedwetting problem. I am not ashamed of this now, as thousands of other kids have had the same problems. At the time, however, this was humiliating. My younger brother started telling other kids around school how extensive the issue was. I was mortified. Even after our mother told him to knock it off, he continued. So I decided to level the playing field. The whole hand and cup of warm water deal didn't work. I stood over him as he slept one night and peed on him. The next morning, my mom was horrified and wound up taking a call from my grandmother. "I don't know what to do. Now both of them are peeing the bed," she explained, clearly frustrated. After a few more times of framing my brother as a bedwetter, he completely stopped using my embarrassing problem as entertainment. Had a chief warrant officer in Iraq throw a bottle of petroleum jelly at me after I got done ranting about something I've long since forgotten. Told me to go take care of it and come back when I feel better. During his afternoon siesta I spent an hour covering everything on his desk with it in the most inconspicuous spots. For example, inside the handle of a coffee mug, underneath the handle of the Curated pod loader, behind the canister holding Curated coffee pods, anywhere he could grab something and not see it without first inspecting it. He came back and proceeded to curse at a rate never witnessed before, as he had to continuously wipe all the jelly off his hands every 3 minutes. He caught the jelly on the inside rims of his over-the-ear headphones before he rimmed his ears with it. But the best came after I let him calm down and get back to work. Everyone else in the office watched me do it. No one said a thing, but they all had their eyes on me as I waited 5 minutes before picking up my phone on my desk and slowly dialed the number at his desk. It rings. Everyone turns to look at him. He's on the computer, picks up the phone, slaps it to his ear. Radio Battalion Simasinovich turns his head. Ear was caked full of petroleum jelly I had dumped all over the earpiece of the phone. Master Guns and Major told me these antics and pranks made that deployment. CW Orion, if you're reading this, sorry, not sorry. Speeding up a co-worker's double-click speed and watch him squirm when his normal double-clicking speed isn't working. Somebody once changed the mouse pointer on my chef's computer to the loading animation. We scratched our heads for a while before figuring it out. I have to admit, it was hilarious watching his mild irritation every day. In 7th grade I used to take homemade lunch to school. We prepared our own salad dressing, lemon juice, salt, oil, etc. And one kid decided it would be good to steal it and drink it before lunchtime. I asked him not to, but he continued to drink it, but started doing so in one gulp, so I couldn't stop him. So instead of making a huge deal, I prepared 2 salad dressings. One that I would actually use on my salad, and another that had all the liquid condiments I could find in my mom's kitchen. It was really fun to see his face as he drank it. He never stole my salad dressing again. In Texas, there is a law that allows the US to take certain possessions to satisfy a debt owed, such as from a lawsuit. So this defendant had been committing Medicare fraud, got caught, has to pay back the money. He's also a total prick during the lawsuit, obstructionist, rude, etc. When the US finally has its judgment and he's pleading poverty, the US attorney that ran the suit basically ends up walking through the impoverished guy's multi-million-dollar house to handpick what is going to be seized. He takes the big ticket items that he's allowed, but it's not going to be enough, so then he just starts taking little crap to pee the guy off. Book half read on the nightstand, gone. Can't take the garage, but you can take the garage door opener, so, gone. I don't know what else he took, but I think the idea is brilliant. The book would pee me off so much. My favorite childhood story. So I was an AP kid and had a bunch of AP friends, and also was in sports and theater. I had a large bunch of friends in nearly every cliche. Anyway, one day, one of my friends gets sucker punched in the halls by some dickwood. Because of the school's zero tolerance policy, getting sucker punched carries the same punishment as sucker punching. So my friend and the dickwood both got in school suspension, but only one of them was punched on the face. I thought that was a little bit unfair, so I got my friends together, and they got their friends together, and every week, one of us would sucker punch dickwood. Every week, one of us would have ISS, and so would dickwood, but since we are many, none of us went to ISS twice. Dickwood on the other hand missed so much class that he had to retake the grade. I was casually walking my pup in the same area I usually do. It's a nice trail surrounding a wetlands reserve, and there's generally a lot of dog walkers and people riding bikes. The schools around here just let out for the day, and there was a group of 3 boys riding their bikes coming from behind me. I could hear their muffled talking and giggling, and all of a sudden they were a few feet behind me and one of them yelled, "Hey, catch," and threw some crumbled paper at me. I couldn't care less about the paper, but the yelling scared my lil pup, so I was naturally angry, but being awkward I didn't say anything. What am I going to do? Beat up some kids? I did have my pup's steamy tater tots in a bag, and as they rode off I lightly tossed it. By God, it lands in one of the kids' hoodies. And he didn't notice. They were too busy cackling away at how they got him. I saw them riding ahead, and it took maybe 100 yards before he noticed there were some little round brown dumplings in his hood. He screamed and threw the bag onto the ground while the other 2 died laughing. They looked back at me, but I was so far behind them that they just rode onward. I also couldn't help myself and laughed as I picked up the poo and threw it out a few minutes later. You know, got to be a good citizen and all that. Guys swerved across 2 lanes on the highway one day and cut me up. I slammed on the anchors and gave a good indignant blow of my horn. He starts acting like Mr. Angry at being called out, so starts slamming on his brakes, then speeding up if I try to overtake, flipping me the bird, the whole caboodle. Seeing the next junction coming up, I flash my lights and start beckoning to him in classic "you want a piece of me" mime, and mouthing "come on then start pointing at the upcoming junction. He obviously believes I actually want to go somewhere quiet and sort it out like men. I swerve angrily into the exit lane and he follows suit. Finally I blow my horn and point at something on the junction, then, whilst he's distracted, swerve back out onto the main highway and speed up so I'm level with him so he can't get back over. He looks over in panic. I smile and blow him a kiss. The junction ends and he's stuck sailing off wherever the junction takes him. It's a 24-mile round trip to get back to here. Back in college, I was sitting in the library trying to work on an assignment. All was quiet for a while until this one obnoxious guy came in and sat at a table near me and proceeded to pull out his phone and have the loudest, most obnoxious conversation with one of his friends. Lots of "bro, seriously bro" and yada yada. I was about to pack up my things and find somewhere else to work when the conversation turned to Netflix. The guy told his friend he should just use his account, and proceeded to loudly state his email address and password for all to hear. This was too good of an opportunity for me to pass up, so I promptly logged in and navigated to the LGBT section and started adding the gayest movies I could find to the top of the queue. I like to think that both guys ended up thinking the other one added the movies to the queue but were too shocked to ever say anything to each other. Usually Netflix allows up to 3 screen streams at a time, so I would have been very tempted to keep 2 Netflix tabs open from his account on my PC at all times. Let them fight over the last connection. I once had a colleague I hated. He was very condescending and really arrogant, so I put an extra Bluetooth receiver in his computer for a computer mouse and kept the mouse in my drawer. I would just open my drawer and it would mess his crap right up. Kept it going for like 2 months. He was about to murder the world when I thought I better stop. Back when I was studying engineering, it occurred to me to try and find an app on my iPhone for those Panasonic projectors in lecture rooms. So I get the app and it just let me connect to the one in the class without a password or anything. I have a friend who is one of those perpetual pranksters. You can't leave your PC or bag or food drink unattended when he's around. So I beam a picture of him onto the projector, so the lecturer is just talking away and this goofy picture of my mate is on the screen. Lecturer doesn't realize yet. People in the lecture start waking up and giggling a bit. Now I use the pen function and draw dong on the picture too. Mate was red in the face and trying to hide. Lecturer finally noticed and says, "Michael, why is there a picture of you on the screen?" Finally, for a fleeting moment, I actually wrecked that sucker. This happened to my so when he was at university. Another comment here reminded me of it. His class were doing presentations in pairs, and he got paired with some girl who didn't bother to bring notes or research information for their presentation. She instead let him do all the work, and any slides she did were made from his notes and research. He complained to his tutor and she told him, "Don't worry, leave it to me." And then the day of the presentation comes. They present, and then at the end the tutor asks the girl a question. If I remember correctly, the question was something like, "Is there any evidence to suggest that some cultures are more prone to mental health problems?" And the girl answered no. The tutor then asked my sir the exact same question, and because he'd actually read the research on the topic, he was able to list off several studies that showed that some cultures are in fact more prone to mental health issues. The girl glared at him the entire time he answered the tutor's question. Pretty sure she ended up with a D, while he got an A or B. I had a 6-month school internship at a mobile phone store. The boss was a total butthole that treated his school interns like full paid workers, even gave me some concerning money responsibilities. A while after the internship he called to tell me I would have to give a statement at court. He had a problem with some customer and a shipment and he planned to tell the court that he explained me everything concerning shippings precisely. Of course he didn't. And of course I didn't lie in front of the judge. My boss attorney gave me a look I will never forget when he realized his stupid plans didn't work out. A few weeks later my now ex-boss tried to call me again. I didn't pick up. Frick this guy. On every email I send, I attach my name, company, position, etc. All the time people will respond, "Thank you Sarah," but my name is spelled with the H. I have started to reply to them leaving off a letter of their name. "No problem Renee, have a good day John." They probably think I am an idiot, but it is worth it to me. Keep up the good work, Hera. When I was a kid I got the Sabrina the Teenage Witch handbook. It was full of kiddie experiences and stuff and was pretty fun. My older sister had upset or annoyed me about something, so I tried out one of the tricks from the book. You fill a cup with water and some corn kernels, put some tin foil on top of the cup. The kernels eventually pop and it makes noise against the tin foil. I put it under her bed. It takes a few days to work, so I completely forgot about it. Until one night I woke up to my two sisters whispering. It had popped in the middle of the night and she thought there was a rat under her bed. Someone in my office would always crush lunches with his gigantic ass lunchbox. Either he ate bricks or lead, I don't know, but I always came to the office fridge and found that my lunch was in pieces. So, after 3 bouts of this, and numerous notes from myself and other colleagues, I carefully removed his lunchbox, emptied the contents, a gigantic sandwich, a Twinkie, chips, some vegetable pieces, and a few other bits, and ran over them with my car. I carefully packed it back in, and put it back. He kept his lunch in a cooler by his cube from then on. Just saying that you went to your car and started it just to flatten the lunch is what makes this truly great. When I was a kid my younger brother and I would go for extra Mandarin lessons after school. Then we'd take the bus back. He would never press the bell for the bus to stop because he knew I'd freak out and press the bell rather than miss the stop. So, one day when he was sitting on the bus but in front of me, I made sure to get off the stop before ours. I laughed my butt off when I saw the bus miss not just our stop but disappear into the distance. Petty? Sure, but I was about 12. We were sitting by a pool once, and a woman stood over my wife and started spraying sunscreen all over herself and my wife. We asked her nicely to please move and she ignored us and kept spraying. When we left, I took one of her flip-flops with me. As a nurse, we had this god-awful patient who made all our lives heck. Needed pain meds on the dot. Needed to smoke every half hour. Sat on the call light all dang day. This person was possibly the rudest human being I've ever met. Treated us like slaves. And was drug seeking. It finally came time for discharge. And this patient decided to come up with a whole bunch of new medical problems. I have chest pain. I have nausea. One side of my body feels numb, so, being the very skilled and rational nurse I am, I asked the doctor for a whole new set of orders. First, I asked for lab draws every 3 hours, meaning needles every 3 hours, to check cardiac markers. Then I asked that the PT be placed on NPO status, nothing by mouth. For the nausea, this person couldn't go an hour without eating something. For the numbness, I requested the PT be placed on strict bed rest for 24 hours, and then have a physical therapy eval ordered, which meant no more going downstairs to smoke. I explained this all to the patient, and he says, crap, I just wanted to stay another night. I ain't doing any of that. I feel fine. Just give me my dang papers. Talked it over with the doctor on call. He gave me the all clear to discharge, and I had him out the door in an hour. Malicious compliance. The best kind. Serious, what revenge of yours hit the victim way worse than you thought it would, to the point you said maybe I shouldn't have done that? In elementary school there was a bully kid who would make fun of me. I had a bad bowl cut and was pretty small, so it wasn't surprising. Me and my friends usually just ignored him. Anyway, one day this kid from Brazil moved into the house next to mine. He was a year older. We used to play soccer together every day after school. I mentioned to him once that this kid would call me names and usually while walking home from school would follow behind me taunting me. One day I'm leaving school and this kid is going slowly behind me on his bike shouting stuff. Just dumb kid stuff, you know. Brazil kid comes out of nowhere, knocks the kid off his bike and just starts beating him. Bully is on the grass crying and bleeding. Brazil kid grabs the bike and gives it to me. You can keep this, and then walks away. I didn't know what to do. I just laid the bike next to the kid and walked home. He wasn't at school for like a week. Later in life I found that kid had a really crappy home situation with abusive parents. I was 10 at the time. Always felt bad for that. Quit bullying me though. I still occasionally see that Brazilian guy. Don't think he even remembers it. Cool on him for helping in his way. I just think it went too far. Brazil kid was actually pretty cool for sticking up for you. And yeah, I wouldn't feel too bad for the bully. Sometimes it has to happen to them a few times before they learn to quit taking a crappy home life out on innocent kids. I was dating this girl and my friend saw her around town a few times and humiliated her in an effort to embarrass me. I told him to stop bothering her, but he did it again. That night I convinced him to try getting back together with his wildly insane and manipulative ex that he hadn't spoken to in years, thinking that he would just humiliate himself by trying. Well, they banged and got back together for a while, and had a baby. Now they are terrible single parents. Jesus, I think the consequences from this one are the worst in the thread. My friends and I used to pull a lot of pranks on each other growing up, and about 10 years ago I was helping my buddy set up a new business. He was ordering business cards and the company he was going through was offering I think 500 or so free with a large order, so we decided to prank our other friend. We made business cards with his name, phone number, home address, and had his job title as professional creep with the slogan, if I'm creepin', you ain't sleepin'. We passed these cards out all over town. He was getting really harassing phone calls for a while and couldn't figure out why. After about 2 years he found one of the cards on a random fridge at a party and put 2 and 2 together. He was P and is still getting random calls 10 years later. I feel really bad about that one. Jesus, change your number. Had a lawyer a few years back who was a piece of absolute crap. 1. Would go months between returning phone calls. 2. Constantly late with court filings to the point the courts multiple times moved to have the case dismissed from lack of action. 3. Lied to me constantly about anything and everything. 4. Refused to be fired. Seriously, when I told him he was fired he just ignored me and kept presenting himself as my lawyer. I had to get the courts involved to get him to stop. 5. Lied about me. Our client has been unreachable. We are considering dropping them. I tried to call you 84 times in THR last 3 months and you didn't answer or return a single one. 6. When I finally did fire him, he told me I had to be in court on a specific date. That didn't work for me. At a specific time, that didn't work for me. Or else the motion to withdraw wouldn't be accepted. So I got to the courtroom and the judge was super nice but confused as to why I was there, and when I told him the story the judge just goes, "Yay, this is all done electronically. I'm not sure why your lawyer would tell you that other than to be a dong." Needless to say, by the end of all this I was P and wrote a 10-page bar complaint about 4 different lawyers and their offices and ethical behavior. Well, the Bar Association decided this was a firm-wide encouraged pattern of behavior and threw the book at the 4 partners. Disbarred for 5 years, restitution to clients, and only allowed to practice under supervision for a period of 5 years after they return. I felt a little bad, but goddang I was so freaking sick of being jerked around. My brother and cousins were walking home from school. While my brother and I were walking and my cousins were on bikes, they kept circling us and making fun of us because we didn't have bikes. One of my cousins then spit on me, out of reflex. I blasted her with my trumpet case and she went flying, landed on the concrete and broke her arm. I felt awful. It was the first and last time I ever hit a girl. My family believed every word of the story, knew this cousin was always a total B to me, and largely believed she had it coming. I still felt awful though. The trumpet case, an elegant weapon for a more civilized age. When I was in 5th grade, my teacher gave out a crap ton of homework one day, so I got the whole class to help me write a letter to the principal. She found out and cried and crap. I felt really horrible because she was just trying to get us ready for a test coming up. I still feel really bad every time I think about it. Oh, I have one for this. My grandpa was a bit old school and gave me prison yard advice for my first week of school. He said, if anyone picks on you, just deal with them right then. Don't take it. First week of kindergarten. A grade 1 kid was pushing me around, not letting me go back to class. I pushed him down against a fence and kicked him in the face 3 or 4 times, splitting his nose. Almost got kicked out of school, until they found out my grandpa had told me to do it. Thing is, no one messed with me after, and that guy was nice to me all the way through to graduation. A kid on my track team would always come by and take a drink of whatever I had with me. I was sick of it and brought a root beer with me which had been spiked with 3x the recommended dose of root beer flavored X-Lax. Sure enough, he came by and I said, "You know what, Tony, why don't you just take the whole thing?" Well, we were having a home meet that day and he was our best pole vaulter and part of the relay team. I thought maybe he'd feel a little off and under pre-form. In the midst of our warm-ups, he went missing and was absent the entire meet. Back in my early 20s, I was working a crap job in the mall. I'd only been working there for about a month when I was promoted to key holder over a guy who started before me. The dude had been a real flake as long as I'd known him, so I wasn't surprised. Apparently he'd been promised the position and was really upset at me. For the next month he was a huge dong to me, swiping sales, complaining to the manager about me, slyly fricking up cleaning projects or displays I had done, and informing the manager that I'd failed to do something. After a full month of his bulls, I eventually snapped. At a few of the local plant nurseries you can buy jars of ladybugs for $10. I bought 3, which was somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 ladybugs. I swiped his keys from the break room while I was on lunch, found his cute new Saturn, and dumped all 3 containers on the floor of his back seat. We closed together that night, so we ended up waking out to the parking lot together after dropping the cash off at the deposit box. I was parked further out, so he got to his car before I did, and I was able to get a peek at my handiwork. It looked like something from a horror film. The ladybugs had swarmed the entire inside of his car, and in the dim light you couldn't really tell what they were, only that the car was full on infested with bugs. The dude had a freaking breakdown right there in the parking lot. Just absolutely lost his mind. I enjoyed the scene at first, but the longer it went on the worse I felt. After he calmed down enough to start making sense, he barreled into this monologue about how he was sure it was the girl from the pretzel stand because he'd been such a huge butthole to her, and he starts crying. He goes on about how he deserves this for being so awful, and then apologizes to me for being such a dong, and keeps going on about how he brought this on himself. It was pretty bad. I offered him a ride home, now feeling really guilty, and when I dropped him off he thanked me for being so nice to him, despite all the awful stuff he'd done. He said his mother was undergoing cancer treatment and it wasn't going well. Oof. He apologized again and I didn't see him for a few days. Crap between us at work improved a lot, but I still felt guilty as frick. He had to sell the car a few months later because the Texas heat had killed all the ladybugs and he couldn't get the smell of them out of the vehicle. His mom died a little while after that and he ghosted the job. Frick, I still think about that dude even now. The revenge felt so righteous when I did it, but afterwards it was nothing but guilt. You also killed 2,000 ladybugs. My sister used to kick my butt on the regular. She had mad anger problems and would go berserk over the littlest things. One time I turned the light on while she was trying to sleep. She beat me up and I ended up going to prom with bruises all over me. All through the years, I never hit her back. I was a super sensitive kid and if I ever hit back, I ended up crying to my mom about how I loved my sister and hated to hurt her. After I graduated, she had calmed down a bit, but she still had issues. Coming back from a small party one night and she is back on her old bulls, just getting mad over something stupid and going totally crazy over it. We get home and get out of the car and say I'm driving home. She keeps saying I'm too drunk even though I'd only had 2-3 mini beers. She grabs the back of my shirt and I'm so pissed off at her. I turn around really fast with my fist out to hit her arm or something. She immediately lets out a blood-piercing scream and drops to the ground. Blood is spurting everywhere. She leaves a trail as she runs inside and wakes up our mom and dad. Turns out, I broke her nose pretty freaking bad, but my mom and dad kept saying it couldn't be that bad because I had done it and that she must have really been freaking with me for me to have done something like that after all these years of her beating on me. I felt so awful. I cried and tried to say sorry, but she ended up going to the hospital. I don't feel so bad now because she purposely never paid the bill, thinking she could bully me into paying it, and she never let it go. She always says I'm the reason her credit and stuff is bad and that she still has collections agencies calling her over the year bill. I ain't paying that crap. Consider it payment for the years of abuse. I think I have told this before, but I think I was 15 and was in class and sat next to a friend of mine. He, for no reason, began to say, "Haha, your bald father," which I followed up with, "Haha, your bald mother." He started crying and ran to the teacher. I honestly forgot his mom had cancer and was getting chemo. Had a roommate who basically let his new GF move into our house in college. She helped herself to everything in the house but never contributed. Finally she parked in my parking spot and that was my breaking point. I let all the air out of all of her tires, thinking she'd just air them back up and it would be an inconvenience. Instead she ended up buying all new tires. Whoops, never came clean about it. Back in middle school, a friend of mine threw a small wadded piece of paper at me. I retaliated by throwing the only thing I could find, which was mud close to my shoes. Smacked him right in the face with it. Worst part is, it turned out to be dog crap that was at the bottom of my shoe. I still vividly remember his angry "WTF man, I throw paper at you and you throw dog crap?" Way back in elementary school, a friend threw a piece of chalk that hit me square in the forehead. It was the most humiliating moment for younger me as everyone who saw that started laughing their asses off. Kids are buttholes. I plotted and planned my revenge to get back in the exact same fashion over the next couple of days. One fine day, weapon in hand, I find him perfectly placed a chalk throw away from me. I yell out his name and quickly launch the projectile as he spins around. For some reason he had his mouth open as he looked at me and the piece of chalk flew directly into his throat. His eyes widen and he starts choking. I stood frozen in shock as he fell on his knees coughing. Luckily somebody grabbed him from behind and thumped his back, so he swallowed the piece. An adult walks in. Cannot remember who it was at the time, but she looks at me and asks what happened. At this point I'm shaking, realizing that I narrowly killed my friend. I say it was a mint. My friend, also shaken at this point, laughs it off saying it went straight into his throat and he didn't taste it. The adult shakes her head and says next time just hand it like a normal person and walks away. Years later when we were moving away to another country I remind him about the incident and come clean about the whole thing. He snaps and yells, "I knew it." When I was a kid I was at a local river, a great swimming spot lots of people came to. My friend pushes me in the river and naturally I came up spluttering and a little red in the face, but it was all in good fun. For the rest of the day I planned to get her back. waiting for my opportunity to push her in until she was at the edge of the river drying off. I pushed her, but her flailing and the slippery nature of the rocks she was on made her slip on the spot, and instead of just splashing into the water, she landed on her back hitting the rocks hard, and then fell into the water. She was winded, but thankfully otherwise unharmed. Our parents were furious at me, and I just spent the few seconds it took to get her out. Felt like a lot longer to me, just hoping I hadn't broken her back or something. 2/10 revenge, would not do again. When I was bullied by some local kids, I filled the petrol tank of their family car with grass, dirt, sticks and stones, bottle caps, pretty much anything I could jam into the petrol tank. I felt sorry for that poor car. My older brother was always quite horrible to me as a child and my parents never really did much about it. He was also much bigger than me, so I couldn't retaliate in a physical way cause I would be swiftly crippled cross-faced walls of Jericho. One day I had just had enough. My revenge. He had been playing Rome Total War for a good 6 hours a day for about 3 weeks. I started a new game and overwrote his save file. Never seen fury like it. I regretted it at the time cause he was so angry it scared me and it made him dislike me even more, but now I praise my 13-year-old self for hitting him where it clearly hurt most. He was a prick, but his choice of submission moves was excellent. IDK what it was, but a lot of the boys in my 6th grade class thought it was hilarious to try and trip people. They'd get your butt no matter how careful you were. Well, I was pretty good at avoiding it, but when I was in gym class this kid named Joey got my butt hard. I was dribbling down court and he nailed me. I face planted hard. So I thought about how to get him, and I got him at lunch. He was holding a lunch tray, so his hands weren't as useful. He nailed a table and lost a tooth. I got suspended for 10 days, and a strict no tripping policy got implemented. Immediate suspensions if caught. Crap sucked. My dad beat my butt raw. Sorry, Joey. This one is not as serious or entertaining as most of the answers you'll find here, but when we were kids, my sister threw water at me and ran away, so I picked up my glass of water and ran after her. I threw the water from the glass at her once I had her cornered. Unfortunately, the glass had slipped out of my hand and it hit her right across her face. She got bruised and cut pretty bad. This one is not as serious. Literally glass someone. A neighbor lady was mean to me, so I went into the laundry room after her and crap on her clothes in the washer. I was 5. I'll let you off because you were 5, but you should have waited and shat on her clothes in the dryer. When I was in nursery, preschool, a kid used to constantly bully me, take toys off of me, etc. One day, outside in the garden, he stole a toy tractor I was riding on. He stood up on the seat and stuck his tongue out at me. Age 4 me had finally been broken. I ran and kicked the tractor, which jolted it forward. He subsequently fell off and rolled down a hill into some stingy nettles and got some pretty bad cuts and bruises. I remember thinking right then and there, wow, I really didn't need to do that, but that little part of me felt great. I was 11. My older brother was 16. We would fight and argue, but one time I was running up the stairs away from him and he whipped the back of my legs with a long rubber chew toy. It left a pretty big, figure 8 shaped welt on my legs. I knew he was faster and stronger than me, and I knew if I tried to attack him he'd stop me. So, I grabbed a flathead screwdriver and held it over the stove until it was red hot. I ran up to him and very openly went to stab him. Knowing he'd stop me, he grabbed my wrist to stop my thrust, as anticipated, and I pushed the red hot head of it into his forearm as hard as I could. Man, I was a crazy butthole as a kid. Sorry, Mike. Jesus. Co-worker and I had a friendly prank war spanning 2 years. Close to the end of our war, he iced my car. Icing involves taking the hose to the parking lot every half hour and spraying a light mist over your victim's car when it's below 0 out. I finished my 12-hour shift to find a car encased in 2 inches of ice. My revenge was, I thought, both more inconvenient for him and less freezing my balls off for me. I decided to take a bedsheet, drape it over his car, and only took 4 or 5 trips out with the hose the next night. So the next morning he finds his car with a 1/4 inch of ice freezing a sheet to his car. When he started peeling off the sheet, he pulled his windshield wipers, arms and all off of his ratty Jeep. I got a very pee-off phone call. I felt bad. The unwritten rule was embarrassing or inconvenient. No damage. I paid for repairs, and he got his revenge. He planted a dozen pieces of smoked herring throughout my car. Took me 6 months to find the last piece, hidden under the carpet under the back window of my car. I can still smell it. I don't even own the car anymore. The husband of a friend of mine was teasing me incessantly at a game night. I had finally had enough and snapped at him, "You must not have had a very good mother." Turns out he was adopted. Nothing to feel sorry about here in my opinion. Sounds like this guy didn't really know what teasing was and instead was just kind of bullying you. Teasing requires for things to be fun and playful, not legitimately annoying. Sure, it was unintentionally close to home, but sometimes people have to learn that if you're going to tease people, they're going to shoot back. Had a neighbor yell at my younger brother about his weight and I took it extra personal. Didn't know how to get him back without getting caught. Then I figured out I could place nails just under the back of the tire so when he pulled out of the driveway he'd run over them. Turns out he was super poor and couldn't afford the repairs. My dad had to carpool with him to work for a month or so. I've never told anyone. Drunk guy came at me on my porch. I was in college. It was welcome week. Kid was all kinds of fricked up. Tried to get him to leave and finally he came up on my porch and swung. I ducked him and shoved him away. He was too drunk. Couldn't keep his balance and bounce his face off the curb. Blood, teeth, it was brutal. I was afraid he was really hurt, but he came to pretty quickly. He ended up getting arrested before it was all said and done. He definitely did that to himself. My dad left a passive-aggressive note. I drew a dong on the note. He hasn't spoken to me for 2 weeks. Used to feel bad but I'm over it. Passive-aggressiveness beaten with passive-aggressiveness. Great. When I was little my friends kept pointing at the little girl on the box of the board game Operation and saying it looks like me. So I pointed at the big fat guy and said that's your mom and didn't realize she was behind me.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.